I should have seen it coming the fourth time. The pattern was there, clear as the quarterly reports I'd been submitting for 6 years. Same routine, same disappointing outcome, same carefully worded explanations about why someone else was better suited for the role I'd essentially been doing already. But this time was different. This time I was ready. The meeting happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I remember because our fiscal year planning sessions were scheduled for that week, and I'd spent the previous weekend preparing my presentation on the departmental restructuring proposal. The same proposal that had been sitting on my supervisor's desk for 8 months, the one that would eventually save the company roughly $200,000 annually. I walked into Martin Crawford's office expecting another polite rejection. What I got was something far more revealing. Martin had been department head for 3 years, promoted from a lateral position in sales when our previous manager retired. He had the kind of confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself twice, the sort of assurance that mistakes experience for wisdom. I'd worked under him since his appointment, watching him take credit for initiatives I'd developed and present my research as departmental achievements. The promotion we were discussing was for Senior Operations Manager, a position that would put me in charge of process optimization and strategic planning. It was work I'd been doing informally for years, the kind of behind-the-scenes coordination that keeps departments running smoothly. The job description could have been written from my daily task list. Martin settled into his chair and launched into his prepared remarks about the competitive candidate pool and the difficulty of the decision. I'd heard variations of this speech before. The first time, I'd believed it was genuinely close. By the second rejection, I'd started recognizing the pattern. By the third, I'd begun documenting everything. He explained that they'd decided to go with David Brennan, a recent hire from our competitor who'd been with the company for exactly 14 months. David was undoubtedly qualified, Martin assured me, with extensive experience in operations management and a proven track record of leadership. I listened without interrupting, taking notes as always. The note-taking had become habitual after the second promotion denial. I'd learned to write down everything, every conversation, every meeting, every casual comment that seemed relevant to my career trajectory. It's remarkable how much you notice when you start paying attention to the details. Martin continued his explanation, touching on David's innovative approach to process improvement and his ability to think strategically about departmental goals. These were the same qualities I'd demonstrated in my restructuring proposal, the same skills I'd used to streamline our inventory management system the previous year. Then he said something interesting. He mentioned that David had handled the interview process with remarkable composure, especially when discussing his previous rejection for a similar role at his last company. This led Martin to reflect on the importance of resilience in leadership positions, the ability to bounce back from setbacks and maintain professional attitude despite disappointment. That's when he made his observation about men handling rejection better than women. He said it casually, almost as an aside, the way people sometimes reveal their actual thinking when they believe they're in safe company. According to Martin, male candidates typically demonstrate more emotional stability when facing professional disappointments. They're less likely to take rejections personally, he explained, and more apt to use setbacks as motivation for improvement. I continued taking notes, my pen moving steadily across the page. Martin was warming to his theme now, sharing his thoughts on gender differences in workplace dynamics and the importance of maintaining objectivity in personnel decisions. He was building a case for why David was the natural choice, explaining how these inherent differences factored into leadership potential. The conversation lasted approximately 25 minutes. I thanked him for his time and consideration, confirmed that I understood the decision, and asked about opportunities for professional development that might strengthen my candidacy for future positions. Martin was pleased with my response, commenting on my professionalism and mature attitude toward the outcome. I returned to my office and spent the next hour typing up my notes from the meeting. Every comment, every observation, every casual remark about gender and professional resilience. I saved the document in the same folder where I'd been keeping similar records for the past 2 years. That folder had become quite comprehensive. It contained detailed accounts of 4 promotion processes, including the specific qualifications listed in each job posting and my documented experience in those areas. I had copies of performance reviews, project completion reports, and email exchanges related to my work on departmental initiatives. I'd saved correspondence about the cost-saving measures I'd implemented and the efficiency improvements I'd developed. I'd also been tracking the promotion history of my male colleagues, noting their experience levels and career progression timelines. The pattern was striking when laid out chronologically. Men with similar or lesser experience were advancing at significantly faster rates, often into positions that aligned closely with work I'd been doing unofficially. The documentation wasn't born from paranoia or spite. It was simply good practice, the kind of thorough record-keeping that had made me effective in my operational role. I'd learned early in my career that memory is unreliable and that professional disputes often come down to who has the better documentation. I'd also learned that recording devices are remarkably compact these days. The app on my phone was designed for lecture capture, the kind of tool students use to record classroom presentations. It's voice-activated and runs quietly in the background, saving files automatically to cloud storage. I'd started using it for my own meetings, initially as a way to ensure I didn't miss important details when taking notes. The recording of my conversation with Martin was crystal clear. I spent the following week analyzing the audio file and comparing it to my written notes. The recording captured not just Martin's words but his tone, the casual confidence with which he expressed his views about gender differences in professional settings. It was the kind of conversation that happens behind closed doors, the type of honest assessment that rarely makes it into official communications. I also used that week to review my documentation from the previous 3 promotion cycles. The pattern was undeniable when examined systematically. Each time, I'd met or exceeded the stated qualifications for the position. Each time, the role had gone to a male candidate with comparable or lesser experience. Each time, the explanation had focused on intangible qualities like leadership potential or strategic thinking. I'd been building a case without realizing it. The decision to approach human resources wasn't made impulsively. I spent considerable time researching company policies on discrimination and equal opportunity employment. I reviewed the employee handbook section on grievance procedures and familiarized myself with the documentation requirements for formal complaints. I also researched the legal implications of recording workplace conversations. In our state, single-party consent laws make it legal to record conversations where you're a participant. The recording was obtained lawfully and documented statements made during an official employment discussion. I scheduled a meeting with Sarah Chen, our HR director, for the following Monday. Sarah had been with the company for nearly a decade and had a reputation for thorough, fair-minded investigation of employee concerns. She was also the person who'd implemented our current anti-discrimination policies. I prepared for the meeting the same way I prepared for any important presentation. I organized my documentation chronologically, created a summary of key points, and developed a clear narrative that connected the individual incidents into a broader pattern. The meeting began with Sarah explaining the confidential nature of our discussion and the company's commitment to addressing employee concerns. I appreciated her professionalism and the way she framed the conversation as a fact-finding session rather than a confrontation. I started with an overview of my employment history and career progression, highlighting my contributions to departmental operations and my qualifications for advancement. I explained my interest in the senior operations manager position and my disappointment with the selection outcome. Then I shared my documentation. Sarah reviewed the materials methodically, asking clarifying questions about specific incidents and timelines. She took notes on my responses and requested copies of relevant documents. Her approach was thorough and neutral, focusing on facts rather than interpretations. When I mentioned the recording, Sarah's demeanor shifted slightly. She understood immediately the significance of documented statements about gender-based decision-making. She asked about the circumstances of the recording and confirmed that I'd been a participant in the conversation. I played the relevant portions of the audio file. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression becoming increasingly serious as Martin's comments continued. The recording was damning in its casual certainty, the kind of unguarded moment that reveals actual thinking behind official decisions. After reviewing all the materials, Sarah outlined the next steps in the investigation process. She would interview relevant personnel, review additional documentation, and prepare a comprehensive report for senior leadership. The process would take approximately 2 weeks, during which time I should continue my regular duties and avoid discussing the matter with colleagues. I agreed to these terms and thanked Sarah for her attention to the matter. She assured me that the company takes discrimination allegations seriously and that there would be no retaliation for bringing forward legitimate concerns. The next 2 weeks passed quietly. I maintained my usual work routine, focusing on current projects and avoiding any behavior that might seem confrontational or disruptive. I knew that my conduct during the investigation period would be scrutinized, so I made sure to exceed expectations in every measurable way. I also used this time to update my resume and begin exploring opportunities with other companies. Regardless of the investigation outcome, I'd learned valuable lessons about my career trajectory and the importance of advocating for myself professionally. Sarah contacted me on a Thursday afternoon to schedule a follow-up meeting. Her tone was professional but less neutral than before, suggesting that the investigation had reached some conclusions. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning in the main conference room rather than Sarah's office. This change of venue suggested that other people would be participating in the discussion. I arrived to find Sarah accompanied by our regional director, James Morrison, and our company's legal counsel, Patricia Williams. The presence of legal representation indicated that the investigation had uncovered significant issues. James opened the meeting by acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations and the company's commitment to maintaining a discrimination-free workplace. He thanked me for bringing the matter to their attention and explained that their investigation had revealed concerning patterns in departmental management practices. Sarah presented her findings systematically. She'd interviewed multiple employees, reviewed promotion records going back 5 years, and analyzed the qualification matrices used in hiring decisions. The data supported my observations about gender-based disparities in advancement opportunities. The recording had been particularly significant in their analysis. Martin's comments represented clear evidence of discriminatory thinking influencing personnel decisions. Combined with the documented pattern of male candidates receiving preferential treatment, it painted a picture of systematic bias in departmental management. Patricia explained the legal implications of the findings. The company faced potential liability for discrimination-based employment practices, and immediate corrective action was necessary to address the identified problems. James outlined the remedial measures being implemented. Martin would be removed from his position effective immediately, pending a comprehensive review of his management practices. An external consulting firm would be engaged to audit departmental procedures and recommend policy improvements. All promotion decisions from the past 2 years would be reviewed for potential bias. They also addressed my specific situation. I would be offered the Senior Operations Manager position with retroactive compensation to account for the delayed promotion. Additionally, I would receive a settlement payment acknowledging the company's failure to provide equal advancement opportunities. The meeting concluded with assurances about ongoing support for my career development and protection against any form of retaliation. Sarah would remain available for any additional concerns, and regular check-ins would be scheduled to monitor the implementation of corrective measures. I accepted their offer and thanked them for their thorough investigation. The outcome exceeded my expectations, demonstrating that documentation and persistence can indeed produce meaningful results. Martin's resignation was announced the following Monday. The official statement cited his decision to pursue other opportunities and thanked him for his contributions to the company. There was no mention of the investigation or the circumstances surrounding his departure. I began my new role as Senior Operations Manager the following week. The position came with increased responsibilities, a substantial salary increase, and the authority to implement the process improvements I'd been developing for years. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same analytical skills and attention to detail that had made me effective in my previous role had also enabled me to document the discrimination I'd experienced. The systematic approach I'd used to identify operational inefficiencies had proven equally effective in identifying discriminatory practices. Over the following months, I focused on establishing myself in the new position and implementing the departmental improvements I'd been planning. The restructuring proposal that had sat on Martin's desk for 8 months was approved within 6 weeks of my promotion. The inventory management system I'd developed was expanded to other departments, generating even greater cost savings than originally projected. I also worked with the external consulting firm to develop more objective promotion criteria and transparent evaluation processes. The new system emphasized measurable achievements and documented qualifications rather than subjective assessments of leadership potential. The changes had a noticeable impact on departmental culture. Employees began taking more initiative in proposing improvements and pursuing advancement opportunities. The promotion process became more competitive and merit-based, resulting in a more diverse group of candidates for leadership positions. 6 months after my promotion, I was asked to present my cost-saving initiatives to the executive leadership team. The presentation went well, and I received positive feedback on both the financial impact and the systematic approach I'd used to identify improvement opportunities. During the question and answer session, one of the executives commented on the thoroughness of my documentation and the clear metrics I'd used to measure success. He noted that this kind of analytical rigor was exactly what the company needed in its operational leadership. I thanked him for the feedback and explained that careful documentation had always been central to my professional approach. It's remarkable how much you can accomplish when you pay attention to the details and maintain accurate records. The executive nodded approvingly and made a note in his portfolio. I suspect he was already thinking about future opportunities for someone with my particular skill set. Looking back on the experience, I'm struck by how much the situation taught me about workplace dynamics and the importance of professional self-advocacy. For years, I'd assumed that good work would speak for itself and that merit would eventually be recognized and rewarded. I learned that this assumption was naive. Recognition requires more than competence. It requires visibility, documentation, and sometimes strategic action. The qualities that made me effective in my operational role also made me effective in documenting and addressing discrimination. The recording device had been the key element, of course. Without Martin's unguarded comments about gender differences in handling rejection, the investigation might have focused solely on individual promotion decisions rather than systematic bias. The audio file provided incontrovertible evidence of discriminatory thinking influencing employment practices, but the recording was only valuable because it was supported by comprehensive documentation of the broader pattern. The individual incidents might have been explained away as isolated decisions, but the systematic analysis revealed a clear trend of gender-based discrimination. I've since been promoted twice more, each time through a transparent process that emphasized measurable qualifications and documented achievements. The company has implemented regular audits of promotion practices and provides annual training on unconscious bias in employment decisions. My current role as Director of Operations puts me in a position to influence policy and ensure that other employees don't face the same barriers I encountered. I've established mentorship programs for junior staff and worked to create more opportunities for professional development and advancement. I still maintain detailed documentation of my work and career progression. The habit has served me well in demonstrating impact and supporting promotion applications. But now I also encourage other employees to document their achievements and advocate for themselves professionally. The folder on my computer has grown considerably over the years. It now contains not just records of my own experiences, but also success stories from colleagues who've learned to document their contributions and pursue advancement opportunities more strategically. I've spoken at several professional conferences about the importance of documentation in career development and the need for systematic approaches to addressing workplace discrimination. The presentations always generate extensive discussion, particularly from women who've experienced similar challenges in their own careers. The most common question I receive is about the decision to record workplace conversations. People want to know whether it's ethical, legal, and professionally appropriate to document potentially discriminatory behavior. My response is always the same. Documentation is a fundamental professional skill, whether you're recording meetings, saving email correspondence, or maintaining project files. The ability to provide accurate, detailed records of important conversations and decisions is valuable in any role. The key is to approach documentation systematically and professionally, focusing on facts rather than interpretations. Emotional reactions and personal opinions don't belong in professional records, but accurate accounts of statements and actions are essential for effective workplace communication. I also emphasize the importance of understanding relevant laws and company policies before making recording decisions. What's legal in one jurisdiction may not be legal in another, and what's legally permissible may not be professionally advisable in all circumstances. The recording of Martin's comments was legal, relevant, and professionally appropriate because it documented statements made during an official employment discussion that directly impacted my career prospects. The evidence was obtained lawfully and used appropriately in the context of a formal discrimination complaint. The experience taught me that professional vindication isn't about revenge or personal satisfaction. It's about creating accountability for discriminatory practices and ensuring that merit-based decisions replace biased ones. The goal isn't to harm individuals, but to improve systems and processes that affect all employees. Martin's resignation was a consequence of his own actions and statements, not a result of any vindictive behavior on my part. I simply provided accurate documentation of discriminatory practices and allowed the company to draw appropriate conclusions about the implications. The broader changes that resulted from the investigation have benefited numerous employees and improved the overall fairness of promotion processes. The external audit revealed additional areas for improvement and led to policy changes that extend far beyond my individual situation. This systemic impact is what makes the experience professionally satisfying rather than personally vindictive. The documentation and investigation process created positive changes that will influence employment practices for years to come. I've maintained cordial relationships with most of my colleagues throughout this process. The investigation was conducted confidentially, and the resulting changes were implemented as general policy improvements rather than responses to specific complaints. Some people undoubtedly knew about the circumstances surrounding Martin's departure, but the professional handling of the situation minimized gossip and speculation. The focus remained on moving forward with improved processes rather than dwelling on past problems. David Brennan, the colleague who received the promotion I'd been seeking, has actually become a valuable ally in implementing the new evaluation procedures. He's acknowledged privately that the previous system had flaws and has been supportive of efforts to create more transparent promotion criteria. We've worked together on several projects since my promotion, and I've found him to be competent and collaborative. The issue was never with individual colleagues, but with the systematic bias that influenced personnel decisions. This distinction is important for maintaining professional relationships and workplace effectiveness. Personal conflicts and systemic problems require different approaches and different solutions. The training programs that resulted from the investigation have been well received by employees and managers alike. The sessions focus on unconscious bias, objective evaluation criteria, and the importance of documentation in personnel decisions. I've participated in several of these training sessions, sharing my experience as a case study in the value of systematic documentation and professional self-advocacy. The presentations always emphasize the importance of focusing on facts and maintaining professional demeanor throughout any investigation process. The company has also implemented regular reviews of promotion statistics and advancement patterns to identify potential disparities before they become systematic problems. This proactive approach prevents the kind of long-term discrimination that I experienced. These preventive measures are perhaps the most important outcome of the entire situation. Rather than simply addressing past problems, the company has developed systems to identify and correct bias before it significantly impacts careers and workplace culture. The external consulting firm continues to provide periodic audits and recommendations for improvement. Their reports have led to additional policy changes and training programs that address various aspects of workplace equity and inclusion. I've been invited to participate in several of these initiatives, contributing my perspective as someone who experienced discrimination and successfully advocated for systemic change. The work is both professionally fulfilling and personally meaningful. My current responsibilities include oversight of multiple departments and strategic planning for operational improvements across the organization. The role requires the same analytical skills and attention to detail that proved valuable in documenting and addressing discrimination. I continue to maintain comprehensive records of my work and achievements, not because I expect to face discrimination again, but because documentation is simply good professional practice. The habits that helped me address unfair treatment have also helped me demonstrate value and secure advancement opportunities. The folder on my computer now includes performance reviews, project reports, and strategic planning documents that support my continued career progression. The systematic approach to documentation has become a cornerstone of my professional identity. I've also mentored several junior colleagues who've faced similar challenges in their career development. The conversations always focus on the importance of documentation, professional advocacy, and systematic approaches to addressing workplace issues. These mentoring relationships have been particularly rewarding because they allow me to share practical strategies that can help others avoid the lengthy process I experienced. Early intervention and proactive documentation can prevent many problems from escalating to formal complaints. The lessons learned from my experience extend beyond discrimination issues to general career development and professional effectiveness. The skills required to document and address unfair treatment are the same skills that support advancement and recognition in any context. Looking ahead, I'm optimistic about the changes that have been implemented and the continued evolution of workplace policies and practices. The systematic approach to addressing discrimination has created a foundation for ongoing improvement and accountability. I'm also encouraged by the increased awareness of unconscious bias and the growing emphasis on objective evaluation criteria in employment decisions. These changes benefit all employees by creating more fair and transparent processes for advancement. My experience has become a case study in the power of systematic documentation and professional advocacy. The outcome demonstrates that individual employees can influence systemic change when they approach problems strategically and maintain focus on facts rather than emotions. The recording that ultimately led to Martin's resignation was significant, not because it captured a single discriminatory comment, but because it provided irrefutable evidence of the thinking that influenced multiple employment decisions over several years. The broader documentation of promotion patterns and qualification disparities was equally important in establishing the systematic nature of the discrimination. Without this comprehensive analysis, the individual incidents might have been dismissed as isolated problems rather than evidence of ongoing bias. The combination of detailed records, objective analysis, and clear evidence created a compelling case that demanded institutional response. The investigation couldn't dismiss or minimize the findings because they were supported by thorough documentation and systematic analysis. This approach to addressing workplace problems requires patience, persistence, and considerable attention to detail. It's not a quick solution or an emotional outlet, but it can be remarkably effective in creating lasting change. The professional vindication I experienced came not from seeing Martin resign, but from witnessing the systematic improvements that resulted from the investigation. The policy changes, training programs, and cultural shifts have created better opportunities for all employees. The promotion I eventually received was meaningful, not just because of the increased responsibilities and compensation, but because it was earned through a fair, transparent process that evaluated qualifications objectively. This distinction between personal satisfaction and professional vindication is crucial for maintaining perspective and focusing on constructive outcomes. The goal should always be to improve systems and processes, not to harm individuals or seek revenge. The experience has shaped my approach to leadership and my commitment to creating inclusive, merit-based workplaces. I've learned that change requires both individual advocacy and institutional commitment to improvement. As I continue advancing in my career, I carry forward the lessons learned from this experience and the responsibility to ensure that other employees have access to fair, transparent opportunities for advancement. The systematic documentation that began as a response to unfair treatment has evolved into a professional strength that supports continued growth and contribution. The attention to detail and analytical thinking that helped me address discrimination also helped me excel in strategic planning and operational leadership. The recording device that captured Martin's discriminatory comments now sits in my desk drawer, a reminder of the importance of being prepared and the power of documented evidence in creating accountability and change. Sometimes the most effective response to professional challenges is simply to pay attention, keep accurate records, and maintain focus on facts rather than emotions. The truth, when properly documented and systematically analyzed, can be remarkably persuasive. That's the lesson I've carried forward from this experience, and it's the advice I share with colleagues facing similar challenges. Document everything, analyze patterns, and never underestimate the power of facts to drive meaningful change. The professional vindication I achieved wasn't about proving others wrong or seeking personal satisfaction. It was about creating accountability for discriminatory practices and ensuring that future decisions would be based on merit rather than bias. That's the kind of vindication that creates lasting value for everyone involved.